Not long ago, I noticed a contrast that's hard to unsee once it clicks. Warren Buffett is worth well over $100 billion. He could live anywhere and own almost anything. Instead, he still lives in the same Omaha house he bought decades ago, an ordinary street. Ordinary neighbors, nothing that signals extreme wealth. Now compare that with someone else. Early 30s, strong income, a high visibility job in a fast-growing city. Recently bought a 7-figure home that stretches every paycheck. Monthly car lease, a luxury watch on financing, family trips paid on credit. Online, the lifestyle looks impressive, arguably more impressive than Buffett's. Nothing went wrong for either person. Both are successful by normal standards, but their financial paths are moving in opposite directions. You see the same pattern with people like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, and Ingvar Kamprad. Ordinary clothes, minimal signals, not because they're cheap, but because they're efficient. I'm Alex. Today we'll break down why many billionaires don't look rich and why that choice matters. When you understand this structure, you stop chasing upgrades that quietly drain time and money. You learn how to keep raises instead of absorbing them. You reduce financial stress without needing a higher income. And over time, you build a life that feels lighter, more flexible, and much harder to break. Cultural conditioning around luxury. We grow up absorbing the same message from movies, music videos, and social media. If money increases, life should get visibly bigger. Bigger house, better car, more upgrades. When income rises, consumption is expected to follow. Staying the same feels like falling behind. But look at how actual billionaires behave. Mark Zuckerberg has worn variations of the same gray t-shirt for years. When asked why, he said, it removes trivial decisions, so mental energy stays available for decisions that actually move the needle. That choice isn't about fashion. It's about efficiency. The same pattern shows up again and again. Steve Jobs kept a uniform. Jeff Bezos drove an ordinary Honda long after becoming a billionaire. These are not publicity stunts. They're quiet rejections of a story most people never question. The middle class is taught that visible upgrades are proof of progress. The wealthy learn something else. Early appearance does not compound. The image does not scale. Consumption creates maintenance, distraction, and obligation. Here's the subtle shift. To most people, luxury signals success. To billionaires, luxury often signals inefficiency. And once you see that contrast clearly, a lot of expensive behavior suddenly stops making sense. Luxury is friction and liability. Luxury feels like a reward, but in practice, it behaves like friction. Every upgrade adds weight to your life. A larger house doesn't just cost more to buy. It demands maintenance, insurance, staff repairs, and constant decisions. What looked like comfort quietly turns into management. At higher levels, this friction becomes obvious. A $10 million home doesn't just sit there. Annual upkeep alone can run hundreds of thousands of dollars. That money has to be earned after tax every year just to keep things running. Miss a year, and stress shows up fast. What was supposed to signal success now limits flexibility. This is why many billionaires avoid high-maintenance assets. They don't see luxury as neutral. They see drag. Each added possession competes for time, attention, and energy. A yacht needs a crew. Multiple homes need oversight. A garage full of cars needs scheduling and service. None of those compounds. Here's the contrast most people miss. While others upgrade their lifestyle, wealthy individuals upgrade optionality. Fewer fixed costs mean more room to wait, move, or act when opportunities appear. One path feels impressive, the other feels light. And once you recognize luxury as a recurring liability instead of a one-time reward, the urge to level up starts losing its grip. Tools that multiply output versus toys that signal status. Wealthy people spend money very differently depending on what it does next. The key question isn't, is this expensive? It's, does this make me faster, more effective, or harder to replace? That's why you'll see billionaires spend heavily on tools, not toys. A private jet isn't about luxury. It buys time. It allows someone to cross 3 cities in one day, close deals, and be home by night. That expense produces leverage. It pays for itself through output. Now compare that to a supercar stuck in traffic. A Ferrari doesn't create time. It consumes it. It doesn't generate new opportunities. It generates attention. One purchase multiplies results. The other multiplies image. The same logic applies at smaller levels. A reliable laptop, great software, or hiring help to free up focus can increase earning capacity. Designer clothes, premium trims, or flashy upgrades rarely do. They feel rewarding, but nothing productive follows. Even financial assets follow this rule. A share of Apple doesn't need maintenance. It doesn't break. It quietly compounds while you sleep. That's why investors prefer assets that work without supervision. Here's the quiet filter billionaires use. If a purchase doesn't increase speed, clarity, or scale, it's probably just decoration. And decoration, no matter how impressive, never builds wealth. Efficiency over extravagance. At extreme levels of wealth, money stops being scarce. Time and attention don't. That's why efficiency matters more than extravagance. Every extra object you own quietly competes for mental space. Every added commitment asks for decisions, follow-ups, and maintenance. This is where lifestyle upgrades start working against you. A bigger house means more rooms to manage more things, to fix more people involved. A packed calendar filled with social obligations looks successful, but it fragments focus. You spend your days reacting instead of directing. We tend to think wealthy people outsource everything, so complexity doesn't matter. In reality, complexity scales faster than help. Someone still has to decide, approve, review, and resolve problems. That cognitive load adds up. Decision fatigue is real, and it doesn't care how much money you have. Efficiency shows up in small, unglamorous choices. Fewer clothes, fewer cars, fewer subscriptions. Fewer nice-to-haves that quietly turn into chores. Each subtraction creates clarity. Each simplification protects energy for decisions that actually move outcomes. Here's the part most people miss. When you upgrade your lifestyle, you often downgrade your focus. You become a manager of stuff instead of a manager of direction. Billionaires don't avoid extravagance because they can't afford it. They avoid it because it interferes with what they value most: control speed and the ability to think clearly when it matters. Social comparison and status pressure. Lifestyle inflation didn't become powerful until comparison went global. A generation ago, you compared yourself to coworkers or neighbors. Today, you're comparing yourself to curated highlight reels from millions of strangers, many financing that lifestyle with debt. Social media changed the reference point. A normal salary can feel inadequate when every scroll shows luxury cars, designer trips, and constant upgrades. The pressure isn't about utility. It's about signaling. Looking successful becomes a full-time performance. Research backs this up. Increased social media exposure is strongly linked to higher spending and lower savings, not because people suddenly need more things, but because the baseline for normal keeps moving upward. What felt comfortable last year now feels behind. Billionaires quietly opt out of this game. Many limit exposure to environments that trigger comparison. They don't track trends. They don't chase status symbols. They anchor their lifestyle to stable reference points instead of public opinion. Here's the subtle advantage. When you stop competing on image, you stop paying the signaling tax. No constant upgrades. No keeping up. No pressure to prove progress. Expenses stay low while income grows, and that gap becomes power. Status is a bottomless pit. There is always a bigger house, a faster car, a more exclusive circle. The only way to win is not to play. And once you stop playing, something unexpected happens. Financial decisions get quieter, calmer, more intentional. That's usually the first sign real wealth is forming. Consumer mindset versus investor mindset. The difference starts with how money is mentally classified. To a consumer, money is something to be exchanged for comfort, status, or relief. To an investor, money is a worker. Once spent, it's gone. Once invested, it keeps showing up. That framing changes everything. When a consumer sees a $50,000 car, they see transportation and enjoyment. When an investor sees the same car, they see what that $50,000 could turn into if left alone for decades. The decision isn't emotional, it's mathematical. This is why high earners still end up broke. Income flows and gets converted into lifestyle and stops there. Nothing is left to multiply. In contrast, billionaires obsess over allocation. Where does each dollar go next? Does it create more dollars? Or does it disappear into depreciation? The script gave a blunt metaphor that sticks. Money can be a soldier. Spend it, and you send that soldier to die on the battlefield of consumption. Invest it, and you recruit it into an army that compounds quietly over time. Once you adopt the investor lens, spending feels different. Purchases come with a second price tag, the future value you're giving up. That's why billionaires don't look rich. They're not emotionally attached to what money buys today. They're focused on what it controls tomorrow. Opportunity cost and compounding loss. The real cost of spending is almost never the sticker price. It's the future you erase when that money stops compounding. This is where most people underestimate the damage of upgrades. Take a common example. You get a raise and upgrade from a paid-off car to a newer model with a $500 monthly payment. That feels manageable. It's only $6,000 a year. Over 10 years, that's $60,000 spent. But invested at a modest long-term return, that same $6,000 per year doesn't disappear. It grows to roughly $94,000. Stretch the timeline to 30 years and the number explodes. That single upgrade quietly costs you well over $700,000 in future value. You didn't just buy a car. You bought the absence of a large part of your retirement. This math repeats everywhere. Bigger apartment, premium subscriptions, frequent luxury travel. Each one feels small in isolation. Together, they drain compounding at the source. The losses are invisible because they exist in the future, not on today's credit card statement. Billionaires think in these long arcs. When they look at spending, they don't ask, "Can I afford this?" They ask, "What does this prevent my capital from becoming?" Once you see money as something that grows quietly over decades, upgrades start looking less like rewards and more like leaks. Expense structure and financial resilience. Wealth isn't built by income alone. It's built by the space between what comes in and what goes out. That gap determines how resilient you are when conditions change. Two people can earn the same amount and live completely different financial lives. One raises expenses every time income rises. Bigger house, nicer car, higher monthly burn. On paper, everything looks successful. In reality, there's no margin. Any shock job loss, market drop, health issue creates immediate stress. The other keeps expenses relatively flat. Income grows, but lifestyle stays stable. That growing gap becomes power. It allows patience. It allows waiting out downturns instead of panicking. It allows saying no to bad opportunities and yes to good ones. This is why billionaires often look underwhelming on the surface. Low fixed costs make them anti-fragile. They don't need perfect conditions to survive. High earners with high expenses are fragile. They need everything to keep working just to stand still. You see this during recessions. The person with expensive obligations scrambles. The person with low overhead stays calm. Same economy, same headlines, a completely different experience. Here's the quiet advantage. When expenses are low, time is on your side. You can hold assets longer. You can avoid forced decisions. You can let compounding do its work uninterrupted. Billionaires don't avoid luxury because they're conservative. They avoid it because resilience beats appearance every time. Savings rate as the true wealth driver. Income gets the attention. The savings rate does the work. That's the part most people miss. Two people can follow the same career path, earn similar salaries, and still end up millions apart. Picture this over a full working life. Both start at the same income. Both get steady raises. One spends every raise upgrading life, better apartment, newer car, more conveniences. By retirement, income looks impressive, but there's nothing left over. The other keeps lifestyle mostly stable and captures each raise quietly. Same job, same years, very different ending. The math is unforgiving. Consuming raises locks your financial position in place. Saving raises creates momentum. One path feels like progress because life looks better year after year. The other feels boring because nothing changes on the surface, but underneath compounding is accelerating. This is why billionaires don't care about how much they earn in a given year. They care about what percentage they keep. High income with low savings is fragile. Moderate income with high savings compounds relentlessly. There's a simple phrase that explains it cleanly. Income is vanity. Savings rate is sanity. Income impresses others. Savings rate determines freedom. Once you understand this, the modest lifestyle makes sense. By refusing to upgrade billionaires, keep the savings engine running at full speed. They don't look rich because looking rich doesn't increase the one variable that actually matters. Happiness, adaptation, and enough. Upgrades promise happiness, but the effect fades faster than the payments. You buy the bigger house, the nicer car, the premium experience. For a few months, it feels like progress. Then it becomes normal. The excitement disappears, but the bills stay. This isn't a personal failure. It's how humans are wired. We adapt quickly. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. What once felt special becomes baseline, and the mind immediately looks for the next upgrade. Comfort resets. Desire doesn't. Here's the quiet trap. You pay a permanent premium for a temporary emotional lift. The joy returns to zero, but the financial obligation doesn't. That's how lifestyles get heavier without people feeling any happier. Research consistently shows that beyond a comfortable income range, more money adds very little to day-to-day happiness. Billionaires don't need charts to understand this. They find a level that feels safe, functional, and calm, and they stop there. That decision is strategic. By defining enough, they avoid the adaptation tax. They don't chase constant novelty. They protect stability time and mental space. This is why they often look underwhelming. They're not depriving themselves. They've simply stopped confusing more with better. And once you stop trying to buy happiness, money becomes much easier to keep. Frugality is cause not result of wealth. It's tempting to think billionaires live modestly because they're already rich. The timeline usually runs the other way. The restraint comes first. The wealth follows. Take Warren Buffett. He bought his Omaha house decades ago, long before his net worth reached astronomical levels. He didn't downgrade into modest living after success. He simply never upgraded out of it. Every dollar not spent on a larger home stayed invested and compounded for generations. That pattern repeats quietly across wealthy families. Early success creates the option to upgrade. They choose not to, not because they can't, but because they understand the trade-off. Spending interrupts compounding. Waiting accelerates it. This reverses a common belief. Most people say, once I'm wealthy, I'll live simply. Billionaires say, because I lived simply, I became wealthy. The behavior isn't a personality quirk. It's a system. Studies back this up. Long-term wealth correlates far more with savings behavior than income level. What you keep matters more than what you make. The discipline to delay gratification compounds just like capital does. This is why billionaires don't look rich. The modest lifestyle isn't a mask, it's the engine. While others consume success as it arrives, they preserve it, protect it, and let time do the heavy lifting. Quietly. Key takeaways. What separates people who look rich from people who become wealthy isn't talent timing or even income. It's how they treat consumption. Billionaires don't avoid luxury out of fear or discipline alone. They avoid it because they understand what luxury quietly steals focus, flexibility, and future options. Wealth grows in silence. It compounds when expenses stay boring and decisions stay simple. The real advantage comes from keeping distance between earning and spending, between desire and action. That distance creates patience. Patience creates resilience. And resilience allows capital to work uninterrupted over long stretches of time. This reframes the goal entirely. The point isn't to win at appearances or upgrades. It's to build a structure that holds under pressure, adapts to change, and buys time rather than stress. Once you see that looking wealthy and being wealthy pull in opposite directions, the modest choices start to feel less like sacrifice and more like control.